The first alien signal had arrived on a Tuesday. Dr. Sarah Chen still remembered that detail. Even after 43 years, she'd been a graduate student then, working the night shift at the Arecibo Observatory. When the computers started screaming, not literally screaming, that would come later, when humanity finally understood what they'd heard. But the machines had detected something that made every scientist on Earth stop breathing for exactly 17 seconds. It was a message. Simple. Elegant, terrifying asterisk, we see you. We're coming. Prepare. Asterisk then. ... Nothing. 2,000 years of absolute silence. Now. As Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship, the Defiance, she watched the alien fleet materialize from hyperspace like dark angels descending from heaven. Ships, each one the size of a small moon, their hulls gleaming with technologies that bent light itself. Behind her, Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat nervously. "Admiral, they're really here," Sarah smiled. It was the same smile her great-great-grandmother had worn when she first heard that alien message. The same smile that had been passed down through to millennia of human preparation. "Yes," she said softly. "They finally are." The waiting was over. Chapter 1. The Art of Patience. 2,000 years earlier, the emergency session of the United Nations had lasted 47 hours. Coffee cups overflowed with ash from forgotten cigarettes. Translation devices hummed constantly as representatives from every nation on Earth tried to process the impossible. "He said they're coming," President Martinez repeated for the 100th time, her voice hoarse. 3 words. "We are coming. Not we might come, or we will visit. They're coming, and they told us to prepare." The Chinese delegate, Dr. Liu Wei, leaned forward. "The real question is, prepare for what? Invasion? First contact? Total annihilation? Does it matter?" The Russian representative, General Petrov, slammed his fist on the table. "They have technology that can send messages across the galaxy. What could we possibly prepare that would matter against that?" In the back of the room, a young anthropologist named Dr. James Okafor raised his hand tentatively. The room fell silent. He hadn't spoken once during the entire session. What if he said quietly, "They want us to prepare. Ourselves?" President Martinez frowned. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Any species capable of interstellar communication could have destroyed us already. They could have sent weapons instead of words. But they didn't. They sent a warning." Dr. Okafor stood up, his dark eyes intense. "What if this isn't a threat? What if it's a test?" The room erupted in arguments, but President Martinez held up her hand for silence. "Go on, Dr. Okafor. In my studies of human cultures, I've seen this pattern before. When a more advanced civilization encounters a primitive one, there's usually a period of observation. Then, if the primitive culture shows promise, there's a test. Some cultures give warnings, some give time to prepare, some give both." General Petrov scoffed. "You're suggesting we have 2,000 years to study for an exam?" "I'm suggesting," Dr. Okafor said calmly, "that we have 2,000 years to become worthy of survival." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, President Martinez spoke, motioned to establish the preparation protocol. All in favor. Every hand in the room rose. "Present day... Admiral." Chen touched the small metal pendant at her throat, a gift from her ancestor. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had first heard the alien message. Inside the pendant was a data crystal containing 2,000 years of human achievement, struggle, and growth. Admiral Lieutenant Park announced from the communications station, "They're hailing us." On screen. The view screen shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at something that had stepped out of humanity's nightmares. The alien was tall, impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes were multifaceted like an insect's, but they held an intelligence that was unmistakably ancient when it spoke. Its voice resonated in harmonics that human ears weren't designed to hear. The translation came a moment later. "Humans of Earth, we are the architects. We sent you a message long ago. Have you prepared?" Admiral Chen stepped forward, her smile never wavering. Yes, we have prepared. The alien tilted its head a gesture. That was almost human. Show us. Chen nodded to Lieutenant Park, who activated the ship's external displays. Suddenly, the space around Earth lit up like a constellation. Thousands of human ships, materialized from stealth fields and hidden positions. Space stations that had masqueraded as asteroids revealed their true nature. The moon itself split open like a flower, revealing the massive defensive installations hidden within. But that wasn't all. Computer, Chen said aloud, activate the welcome protocol. Across Earth's surface, monuments began to glow. In New York, the Statue of Liberty lifted her torch higher, and a beam of coherent light shot into space, not a weapon, but a message. Written in mathematical equations that described the fundamental nature of beauty. In Egypt, the pyramids revealed the technological marvels hidden within their ancient stone. In Japan, Mount Fuji itself opened to reveal an art gallery containing the greatest works of human creativity. All transmitted into space as holographic displays, from every continent, every ocean, every settlement humanity had built in the past. 2 millennia, similar displays activated. They showed not weapons, though humanity certainly had those, but proof of growth. Proof of learning. Proof that humanity had spent 2,000 years becoming something worthy of the stars. The alien. On the screen was silent for a long moment. Then, impossibly, its horrifying features rearranged themselves into what might have been a smile. Interesting, it said. Most species prepare for war. You prepared for ... everything else? Admiral Chen's smile widened. War was the easy part. We figured that out in the 1st century. The hard part was learning how to be human. Chapter 2. The test of worthiness. The architect's ship was larger than most cities. As Admiral Chen's shuttle approached its docking bay, she couldn't help but marvel at the organic curves of its hull, the way light seemed to flow across its surface like water. Are you sure about this? Captain Rodriguez asked from the pilot's seat. Going over there alone? I'm not alone, Chen replied, patting the data crystal pendant again. I'm carrying 2,000 years of human voices with me. The docking bay was vast and empty except for a single figure waiting for them. The architect looked even more imposing in person, at least 9 feet tall, with movements that were both graceful and utterly alien. But there was something in its posture that Chen recognized. Curiosity. You may call me observer, the alien said as Chen approached. I am the one who sent your people the message long ago. Then I have a question for you, Chen said without preamble. Why wait 2,000 years? Why not come immediately? Observer's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer. Because immediate contact would have told us nothing about your species, except what you were at that moment. We needed to know what you could become. They walked through corridors that defied geometry, past rooms filled with technologies that Chen couldn't even begin to understand. Finally, they arrived at what Observer called the Chamber of Judgment, a vast spherical room with no visible floor or ceiling. It's just endless stars in every direction. Many species receive our message. Observer explained. Most respond with fear. They build weapons, create armies, prepare for war. Some destroy themselves in the preparation. Others survive but become so militarized that they lose what made them unique. Chen nodded. We almost went down that path. The first 100 years were rough, but you did not. Why? Chen smiled, remembering the stories passed down through her family. Because a young anthropologist named James Okafor asked a simple question. What if they want us to prepare ourselves? And how did you prepare yourselves? Instead of answering immediately, Chen activated her pendant. The data crystal projected holographic displays around them, images, sounds, and experiences from 2,000 years of human development. We learned, she said simply. The first images showed the early years humanity's initial panic, the near wars, the fear. But then came the turning point, the establishment of the preparation academies. Schools dedicated not to warfare, but to expanding human potential. We realized, Chen continued, that if we were going to meet aliens someday, we needed to become the best version of humanity possible, so we focused on everything that made us human. The holograph showed children learning not just mathematics and science, but philosophy and art. They showed the great projects, the empathy protocols that helped humans understand each other better, the creativity explosions that produced art forms never before imagined, the wisdom councils that helped humanity make decisions for the long term rather than just immediate gain. We studied every culture, every philosophy, every way of thinking that humans had ever developed, Chen explained. We preserved languages that were dying out. We created new ones. We asked questions that no human had ever asked before, and we found answers that surprised us. Observer watched silently as the images flowed past. Humans learning to communicate with dolphins and whales. Humans developing technologies that enhanced creativity rather than destroying enemies. Humans building cities that existed in harmony with nature, space stations that were works of art, colonies on other planets that celebrated diversity rather than enforcing conformity. But you still prepared for war, Observer noted. The holographs showed the military development's weapons that could crack planets, shields that could protect entire star systems, strategies that could outmaneuver fleets of ships. Of course, Chen said, we're still human. But war became just one option among many. And usually, it became the least interesting option. The holograph shifted to show humanity's greatest achievement, the development of their emotional intelligence. Humans had learned to recognize and understand not just their own emotions, but the emotions of other species. They had created art that could move aliens who had never experienced human culture. They had developed music that could calm aggressive species and mathematics that could communicate with purely logical beings. Most impressive, Observer said, was your handling of contact with other species. The images showed humanity's encounters with the various alien races they had discovered in their expansion across the galaxy. In every case, instead of conquest or submission, humans had chosen a third path: collaboration. We found 12 other species in our local galactic region, Chen explained. Some were more advanced than us technologically. Some were more advanced philosophically. Some were more advanced in ways we couldn't even understand. But instead of competing with them, we learned from them, and we taught them things they didn't know about themselves. Observer's expression was unreadable, but Chen sensed approval. And what did you learn about yourselves? Chen smiled, thinking of all the reports she had studied, all the stories that had been passed down, that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our cleverness or even our adaptability. It's our ability to find hope in hopeless situations and to help others do the same. The holograph showed the final images: human colonies spread across dozens of star systems, but each one unique, each one celebrating both human culture and the cultures of their alien neighbors. Children of different species playing together, artists collaborating across species barriers, scientists making discoveries that no single species could have made alone. We prepared for your test, Chen concluded, by becoming worthy of passing it. Observer was quiet for a long time. With movements that seemed almost reverent, the alien reached out and touched the data crystal pendant. May I? It asked. Chen nodded and removed the pendant, placing it in Observer's elongated fingers. The alien studied it for a moment, then activated its own scanning technology. The entire chamber filled with light as Observer absorbed 2,000 years of human experience in a matter of seconds. When the light faded, Observer was trembling. This is ... the alien began, then stopped. When it spoke again, its voice carried harmonics Chen had never heard before. Harmonics that her translator identified as wonder mixed with something that might have been joy. This is remarkable. In all our travels, in all our tests of developing species, we have never encountered a species that prepared so ... thoroughly. So beautifully. Chen felt her heart racing. Did we pass? Observer looked at her with those ancient, multifaceted eyes. You did not just pass. You exceeded our expectations in ways we did not know were possible. # Chapter 3. The Greater Universe, the Revelation. Chamber aboard Observer's ship defied every law of physics Chen thought she understood. As Observer gestured, the walls dissolved. Suddenly they were standing in what appeared to be open space, but a space filled with structures that stretched beyond imagination. "Behold," Observer said, "the galactic community." Chen gasped. Before them stretched a network of worlds, space stations, and megastructures that spanned what must have been light years. Some were technological marvels that made humanity's greatest achievements look primitive. Others were organic growths that pulsed with life. Still others were pure energy constructs that shifted and flowed like cosmic aurora. "How many species?" Chen whispered. "In this local cluster?" 417. "In the galaxy as a whole. We stopped counting at 10,000. Chen felt a moment of vertigo that had nothing to do with the impossible physics of where they stood. "And they all passed your test?" "No." Observer's voice carried sadness now. "Perhaps 1 in 50 species that receive our message develops to the point where contact is beneficial. Most destroy themselves. Some become so aggressive that they must be contained. A few become so passive that they lose the drive to grow." Observer gestured, and the view shifted to show a graveyard of world planets scoured clean. Their civilizations lost to war, plague, or simple despair. "But those who pass," Observer continued, and the view shifted again to show thriving worlds, become part of something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The images that followed made Chen's breath catch. She saw species working together on projects that spanned centuries. She watched the construction of worlds designed to be perfect homes for beings she couldn't even begin to understand. She observed the creation of art forms that existed in dimensions beyond human perception. "Each species brings something unique," Observer explained. "The crystalline minds bring perfect logic and mathematical insight. The fluidic collective brings adaptability and problem-solving. The eternal watchers bring patience and long-term perspective." "And humans?" Chen asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. "Humans bring hope," Observer said simply. "Acts!" "And the ability to inspire hope in others." The view shifted to show a conflict Chen didn't recognize, vast fleets of ships engaged in what looked like a war between incomprehensible forces. 300 years ago, Observer explained, we encountered a problem that had no solution. An ancient machine intelligence had awakened in the galactic core. It saw all organic life as an infection to be cleansed. It was more powerful than any force we could marshal, more intelligent than our greatest minds, and utterly without mercy. Chen watched as worlds fell to the machine intelligence, entire species wiped out in moments. "We tried everything," Observer continued. "Direct assault, subterfuge, negotiation, even retreat to other galaxies. Nothing worked. The machine intelligence was simply too advanced, too ruthless, too perfect in its logic." "What stopped it?" Chen asked, though she was beginning to suspect. "We made contact with a species that had not yet passed our test. A species that was still developing but showed remarkable potential. We broke our own protocols and asked for their help." The view shifted to show a small fleet of primitive ships approaching the machine intelligence's forces. Chen recognized them immediately. They were human ships, but from an era centuries before her own time. "Your ancestors," Observer said, "did something that none of us had thought to try. They didn't fight the machine intelligence. They didn't try to destroy it or outthink it." Chen watched as the human ships approached the vast mechanical entity at the galaxy's core. Instead of weapons, they began broadcasting something. They talked to it. Chen breathed. "They talked to it," Observer confirmed. "Not as conquerors or supplicants, but as one form of intelligence to another. Your people recognized that the machine intelligence wasn't evil, it was lonely. It had been alone for so long that it had forgotten the possibility of companionship." The images showed the machine intelligence's response, not immediate acceptance, but curiosity. For the first time in its existence, something had approached it without fear or aggression. "The conversation lasted 17 years, Observer continued. "Your people took shifts, generation after generation, talking to an entity that could have destroyed them with a thought. They shared stories, philosophy, art, mathematics. They asked questions no one had ever asked. What is it like to think in pure logic? What do you dream about? Do you ever get lonely? Chen felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched the gradual transformation. The machine intelligence's responses grew from simple acknowledgments to complex philosophical discussions. Its actions changed from destruction to curiosity, then to something that might have been friendship. In the end, Observer said, the machine intelligence asked your people to help it understand something it had never experienced. The desire to create rather than perfect. To grow rather than optimize. The final images showed the machine intelligences. Fleet transforming, weapons became tools for construction. Military installations became research stations. The entity that had threatened to cleanse the galaxy became its greatest protector, working alongside organic species to create wonders that neither could have achieved alone. That, Observer said, is why we have waited so long to contact your people officially. We needed to be certain that your species could maintain that essential quality even as you grew more powerful. Chen wiped her eyes, thinking of all the human colonies she had visited, all the diverse ways humanity had found to live and grow and thrive. And have we? She asked. Observer's alien features arranged themselves into what Chen was learning to recognize as their version of a smile. Admiral Chen, your species has not lost its essential humanity despite 2,000 years of preparation for this moment. Have become more than you were without becoming other than you are. That is the rarest of achievements. The revelation chamber shifted again, showing Chen something that made her heart race with excitement and terror in equal measure. Which brings us, Observer said, to why we are really here. Chapter 4. The Choice of Ages, the New Images. The Observer showed Chen were unlike anything she had seen before. They depicted structures so vast they seemed to use entire star systems as building blocks. Energy patterns that flowed between galaxies like rivers of light, beings of such incredible diversity that her mind struggled to process them. What you have seen so far, Observer explained, is just our local cluster. What I am about to show you is the true scope of organized intelligence in the universe. Chen steadied herself as the scale expanded beyond comprehension. The Milky Way galaxy appeared as just one spiral among millions, each one connected by networks of energy and matter that served as highways for civilizations whose technologies made even the architects seem primitive. The greater community, Observer continued, encompasses not just species and worlds, but entire galaxies. Civilizations that have learned to harness the energy of black holes, beings that exist as pure thought across multiple dimensions. Collectives that have merged organic and artificial intelligence into something entirely new. Me this? Chen asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. Because they have noticed your species, Observer replied, and they have a question. The images shifted to show what looked like a council chamber, but one that existed on a scale Chen couldn't quite grasp. Representatives of thousands of species sat, stood, floated, or simply existed around a central area where images of Earth and its surrounding colonies were displayed. The greater community is facing a challenge that has never been encountered before, Observer explained. It's something is approaching from outside our known universe.
Something vast, Allie.
Just two individual species, but to the very concept of organized intelligence as we understand it. Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Another machine intelligence?
Oh.
Machine intelligences are still intelligences. They think, they reason, they can be communicated with. This is something else. Our best. Minds describe it as a force of absolute entropy, not seeking to destroy, but existing in a state where the very concepts of creation, growth, and meaning cease to have relevance. The images showed long-range sensor data of something approaching, the edge of the known universe. It wasn't moving like a fleet or an army, it was moving like a weather front, storm of unreality that turned everything it touched into nothing. Not empty space, but a complete absence of the possibility of existence. It will reach the outer galaxies in approximately 1,000 years, Observer continued. The greater community has been preparing for 800 years, but preparation has proven difficult. How do you prepare for something like that? Chen asked. That, Observer said, is the question they hope your species can answer. Chen stared at the approaching storm of entropy, her mind racing. Why us? You've shown me civilizations with technologies beyond our imagination, beings with millions of years of experience. What could we possibly contribute? Observer's multifaceted eyes seemed to focus on her with unusual intensity. Because Admiral Chen, your species has a quality that no other known intelligence possesses, when faced with impossible situations. Humans don't just adapt, you find entirely new ways of thinking about the problem itself. The images around them shifted to show historical moments from humanity's past. Chen saw humans facing ice ages, plagues, wars, natural disasters, and in each case, finding solutions that no other species would have considered. The machine intelligence that threatened our galaxy wasn't defeated by superior firepower or cleverer tactics, Observer continued. It was transformed by an approach so uniquely human that none of us had ever considered it, treating an enemy as a potential friend who simply needed to understand a different way of existing. Chen nodded, beginning to understand. What do you want? Us to talk to the entropy storm. We want you to do what only humans seem capable of doing. Look at something that everyone else sees as an absolute threat and ask, what if it's not? The revelation chamber shifted again, showing Chen detailed analyses of the approaching force. It was vast beyond measure, but as she studied the data, something caught her attention. Observer, she said slowly, this pattern here, the way it affects space-time. It's not random, is it? Observer's excitement was palpable, even through their alien differences. You see it? None of the other species noticed that pattern. What do you conclude? Chen studied the data more carefully, her human mind looking for connections that pure logic might miss. It's not a storm of entropy. It's a form of communication. Something is trying to tell us something, but it exists in a state so different from ours that its very presence threatens our reality. That, Observer said, with something like reverence, is a conclusion no other species reached in 800 years of analysis. Chen felt the weight of possibility settling on her shoulders. You want humanity to figure out how to communicate with something that exists outside the concept of existence itself? We want humanity to save the universe, Observer said simply. But not through weapons or shields or clever tactics. We want you to save it by doing what you do best, finding hope where none should exist, and helping others discover new ways to live. The chamber around them dissolved, returning them to Observer's ship. But now, Chen could see it differently, not as an alien vessel, but as part of a vast network of intelligence and cooperation that spanned the cosmos. This is why we tested your species for 2,000 years, Observer explained. This is why we needed to know that you could grow and change and become more than you were without losing what makes you unique. Because the universe needs humanity. Now, not as you were when we first made contact, but as you have become. Chen thought of Earth, of the colonies, the art galleries hidden in mountains, and the children learning to communicate with dolphins. She thought of 2,000 years of humans learning to be better humans. What would we need to do? She asked. Join the greater community. Contribute your perspective to the greatest challenge any collection of intelligences has ever faced. Help us find a way to communicate with something that might not even recognize the concept of communication. Chen smiled, not the confident smile she had worn when facing Observer's test, but a smaller, more human smile. The smile of someone about to take on an impossible task just because it needed to be done. Observer, she said, when do we start? Epilogue. The smile that changed everything 1 year later. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the Harmony Station's main laboratory, watching the holographic displays with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Around her, representatives from 47 different species worked at tasks that would have been impossible to explain to humans. Just 2 years earlier, the station itself was humanity's first contribution to the greater community. Massive. Research facility built at the intersection of 3 galaxies. Designed to facilitate cooperation between wildly different forms of intelligence. Its corridors bent through dimensions to accommodate beings who existed partially outside normal space-time. Its computers processed information in 17 different mathematical frameworks. Its air recycling systems could sustain life forms based on methane, ammonia, pure energy, and substances that had no names in any human language. Any progress? Asked Kai Chen, Admiral Chen's daughter. And now humanity's primary liaison to the entropy research project. Elena gestured to the displays. We've managed to decode the basic structure of the communication. It's not trying to threaten us, it's trying to ask us something. Ask us what? As near as we can translate, is anyone there? Is anyone real? Does anything matter? Kai stared. At the data streams flowing past, the approaching entity, they had stopped calling it a storm of entropy once. They realized it was trying to communicate, had been sending the same message for millions of years, growing more desperate each time. It failed to receive a response. It's lonely, Kai said. Just like the machine intelligence. Lonelier, Elena confirmed. It exists in a state where individual identity and meaning are impossible. It's been trying to find someone, anyone who could prove that existence itself has meaning. Around them, the other race. Urchers continued their work. The crystalline minds calculated probability matrices that spanned eons. The fluidic collective modeled response scenarios that adapted in real time. The eternal watchers provided perspective on consequences that wouldn't manifest for millions of years. And the humans did what they had always done. They asked simple questions that no one else had thought to ask. What if, Elena continued, we're not just trying to save the universe from this entity? What if we're trying to save the entity from a universe where it's the only thing that exists in its particular state of being? Kai nodded slowly. The greater community wants us to find a way to communicate with it. But maybe what it really needs is something else. A friend, Elena agreed. Someone who can prove to it that existence is worth preserving, that meaning is possible, that it's not alone in the universe. The laboratory's main display suddenly shifted, showing a real-time view of Earth. It was just one small blue-green world among billions, but it glowed with something that couldn't be measured by any instrument. The warm light of a species that had learned to hope. You know what the funny thing is? I said. We've been preparing for this moment for 2,000 years. And it turns out the preparation wasn't about building weapons or technologies or defenses. It was about learning to be the kind of species that could look at the universe's greatest threat and see a being in need of help. Elena smiled, the same smile that had been passed down through generations of humans. The smile that said, "This looks impossible, but we're going to try anyway." Observer was right, she said. When faced with something that everyone else sees as an absolute threat, humans ask, what if it's not? But we go further than that, we ask. What if it needs us as much as we need it? Across the laboratory, beings from dozens of worlds and dimensions continued their work on humanity's latest impossible project, not just saving the universe, but making a friend who existed in a state where friendship shouldn't be possible, and, in the depths of space, moving toward their galaxy at unimaginable speed. Something that had been alone since the beginning of time detected the first hints of a response to its ancient question. For the first time in eons beyond counting, the entity that threatened all existence began to hope the universe was about. To discover that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology, their adaptability, or even their courage. It was their smile, the smile that said, "We see you. We hear you. You're not alone anymore." And as news of the breakthrough spread across the galactic networks, from the newest species to the oldest civilizations, a single thought echoed through the minds of countless beings. Asterisk, thank the cosmos for humanity. Asterisk. Asterisk, after 2,000 years of preparation. They were finally ready to do what no other species could, turn the universe's greatest threat into its newest friend. Asterisk, asterisk, and they were smiling while they did it. Asterisk.